All right. So here, what we are going to do is to understand how consumer spending will adjust with disposable income. Okay. So this is a very important macroeconomic relations. Okay. So this relation between disposable income and consumer spending will eventually help us understand what determines the level of GDP. Also help us to understand why certain government policy is necessary and useful. Like, say, for example, so the current stimulus plan, why Senate, Congress, President, they want to pass this massive stimulus plan, right? But we need to start from small and simple. Now let's look at how your spending change with your income. Okay. So first, if we look at the actual data, okay, the data will be look like this. So we have disposable income on the horizontal line, spending on vertical line, right? By the way, so disposable income is your income after tax you paid and the transfer you received. So what is the tax? Like your income tax, right? Or property tax your parents pay. And what is transfer? Like last year, so most of us receive a check from the government. Like we have a family of four, we received 2,300. And then later, toward the end of the year, I believe we receive another 1,200. And then now, so in the coming weeks, so we are expecting to receive maybe 2,000. I don't know. So, but that's considered transfer, right? So that's disposable income. Now, given this is disposable income, so we are going to spend, and then we save. And then why we want to save? This is for future spending or future unexpected spending. Like we have two kids, and then so we may want to save to pay for their future college tuition, or so we need to save for our retirement, right? So that's just the same rationale behind pretty much everyone. Okay. Now, if we look at US data, so you can see, so these spending and the disposable income follow a very nice relationship. So this is pretty much linear, right? So but we need to understand what determines the shape, the slope of this relationship, right? Now, so we are going to have a consumption function. So this is an equation showing how an individual household's consumer spending varies with their disposable income, right? And more specifically, we have this equation. So C is consumer spending, like how much you or your family spend. So that's going to depending on your disposable income, right? YD stands for disposable income, and NPC, right? So this just says, okay, so you and me and pretty much nobody will going to spend all of your income. You always want to save some for future unexpected spending, right? But then, so here is A term. So what is A term? A is a constant. And in economics, and particularly in this part of macroeconomics, so A is called autonomous consumer spending. So this is the amount a family will spend even with zero income. So the way we understand that is the minimum consumption for us to survive. Like we need a shelter, we need heat, we need water, we need food, we need clothing. Okay, so those are the minimum for us to survive in a civilized economy. But certainty A will vary from year to year, and A will vary from country to country, right? But the meaning is the same. which is the minimum or the autonomous spending you must spend regardless of your income. Okay. Now we are going to run a few algebra. Okay. So first, so you have this MPC, right? So that's the definition. If we multiply both sides by delta YD, which is change in disposable income, we are going to have this equation. And so how we understand this equation? This just says, so if my income increased by $1, and then so my consumption will increase by this amount. Okay, and so how would this help us? So this is going to help us to understand the consumption function. Later on, you're going to see, so the MPC will be the slope of the consumption function. But first, let me show you a practice question. Suppose when Sue's disposable income is 10,000, she spent 8,000. When her disposable income is 20,000, she spent 14,000. Now the question asks you, what is her MPS and then what is her autonomous spending? Right. So let's start with MPC. So MPC equal to change in disposable income, change in C. Now here this is equal to 20,000 minus 10,000, 14,000 minus 8,000. So this is equal to 26. And hence MPS equal to 0.4. Right? So now what is her autonomous spending? So now we need to use C equal to A plus MPC times YD. When her income is 10,000, she spent 8,000. Okay, so that's A plus 0.6, right? And then from here, we can find out A equal to 8,000 minus 0.6 times 10,000. That equal to 2,000. So the answer is D. Okay. All right. So now we can look at consumption function. Okay. So consumption function C equal to A plus MPC times YD. Okay. And then the slope of this consumption function equal to MPC. How we understand that? So we move to right hand side. You increase your disposable income. And then so if we look at the changes in vertical line, so you're going to change your consumption, right? But first of all, just mathematically, so delta C divided by delta Y, that's going to give you the slope. This is mathematically, right? But now economically, so delta Y divided by delta C divided by delta Y is equal to MPC. So hence, so the consumption function has a slope of MPC. Now, what is here? So this is A. Why? It's because now you have 0 YD. With 0 YD, your C equal to A. So here, this is A. Okay. So you may be wondering, how well do the data fit with the theory? Which theory? The theory we just proposed, C equal to A plus MPC times YD. Right? So this is theory. Okay. And so now we can look at actual data. This is, for example, we take 2013. So we are going to look at many American households to see their income they report in their tax return. And also you can survey them, basically just ask them questions, how much you spent during the past year. Okay, so actually, so there are several government agencies. So they're running this type of survey or around the clock, like every year, every month. Okay, and then why they want to do that is we are going to have a measure regarding to our economy. So that's going to help us to conduct the right public policy, right? So now given those data, so we just put them in a diagram, okay? And then these 4 points represent the data point we observe. From these 4 points, no, sorry, 5 points. So you can see, so we can feed the data with a almost perfect straight line. Or in other words, our consumption function we postulated in previous slides is almost a perfect representation of a consumer's behavior in terms of consumption as a function of disposable income. Okay, so this look at individual level. Okay, so the way we look at is just take a time period and then look at different American households to see how their consumption varies with their income. Now, we can look at aggregate, right? Because this is a macroeconomics class. And then similarly, so what is aggregate? So we just take individual together, right? And then, so left-hand side, we have C. Now it's a summation of many small c. And MPC is the same, because here we just say everyone has the same behavior, same margin of propensity to consume. But in the more advanced class, or if you read newspapers, so actually, so the MPC is different across income distribution. Usually, lower income family has higher MPC when income is low. On the other hand, rich folks, they have lower MPC, right? So this difference in MPC has profound impact on the conduct of fiscal policy. That private expense, so why not everyone will receive a check from the government. If you read the newspaper, you probably already noticed. So family with an income of 150,000 will receive a check. If your family has an income exceed 150,000, so you're not expecting a check. Oh, by the way, so this 150,000, this is taxable income. Okay. All right. So finish this part. So YD is the total disposable income, and A is the autonomous spending, just aggregate everyone together, right? So now we can look at another practice question. Assume aggregated consumer spending equal 5,000 when aggregate disposable income 0. When disposable income increased from 300 to 400, consumer spending increased by 70. What is the equation for aggregate consumption function? First, the aggregate consumption function writes as C equal to A plus MPC times YD. Next, we need to find A and MPC. So A, the answer for A lies in this sentence. So A equal to 5,000. MPC come from here. So MPC equal to 70 divided by 400 minus 300. Okay, so that's equal to 0.7. Hence, the answer is C. Right. Now, like in when we discuss demand and supply, right? So this consumption function, it may change. Okay, it also can shift. So sometimes the curve will shift up. What that means? That just means given the amount of disposable income I'm going to receive, so my spending will increase. What can cause this change? It could be the case the consumer expecting higher aggregate income or wealth, right? So this is happening right now. Okay, so we are expecting the pandemic will be under control. The economy is going to have a strong recovery. Like most of economies, they expect or they predict the US economy is going to expand by 7% this year. So that's going to translate into higher income. So then the aggregated consumption will increase, right? All right. So on the other hand, maybe there's a decline in aggregate consumption. So that just reflects a downward shift in the aggregate consumption function. But what caused a decline in aggregate consumption? So this is probably captured by what happened last summer, or like beginning of the last spring, right? Because we observe a onset of pandemic, right? And then so we are forced to stay at home. The business was closed, right? And then the economic outlook is very bleak. So the income is expecting to drop. So hence, so people don't want to spend, right? So then the aggregate consumption function went down. Okay. To summarize, okay. So either the changes in expected future disposable income, like I just explained, right? Like last year, so we were expecting the pandemic is going to hit us hard, so the disposable income will decrease. So hence the aggregate consumption decrease. And then now, so we are expecting the pandemic will under control. Our disposable income will increase because the economy is recovering strongly, and then the consumption will increase. Okay, or on the other hand, so there's a changes in aggregate wealth, either through booming stock market like last year, or through booming housing market. Actually, it is also happening, right? So in either case, that's going to affect our consumption. All right. So now, with this discussion as a preparation, okay, so we can look at the long run behavior of American economy, and particularly we are going to focus on the consumption, right? Consumption as a function of disposable income. Okay, so we start with left-hand side. Okay, on the left-hand side, we have aggregate disposable income, horizontal line. Consumer spending, this aggregate consumer spending in vertical line. So just pay attention what is written in the parentheses. Billions of $2005, billions of $2005. So they just used to take care of the price change, right? Or take care of the inflation or deflation. to make the comparison meaningful, right? Or in other words, so this 2005 has been used as the base year to calculate income and calculate consumer spending. Okay. Now we are going to feed the observations for 1930s in this diagram. Let's say, for example, here, so this is 1941, this is 1933, so this dot, right? Or in other words, let's just look at this dot. This dot just tells us, so in 1941, the total disposable income in American was around 1.2 trillion in 2005 dollar, right? And so if we look at the total spending is around 0.9 trillion in 2005 US dollar. So that's how we read this graph. And surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly, so we can see, so the data can be fed by almost perfectly by a straight line. And this straight line is consumption function. And this consumption function is given by here, right? So this just tells us in 1930, the marginal propensity to consume is about 70%. So this is in 30. Now, if we move to right-hand side, we look at longer time period, okay? And here, this part is coming from here, in Great Depression in 1930. Now, and we have another group of data. It seems like not in the same line as in the Great Depression data. What is here? So this is post-World War II, roughly from 1950 and beyond. Okay, and so you can see, so in order to feed the post-World War II data, everything, so we need a different consumption function, right? So this consumption function different from the consumption function here in two senses. Number one, if you extrapolate, you can see the A or capital A increase. Now, number two, so you can see if you look at here, MPC also increase, right? And so what explains the increase in A and increase in MPC? Okay, the most convincing explanation is because after World War II, the US economy enters the golden age. So the expectation regarding to economic growth and regarding to improvement in standard of living was very, very bright. And then people has the confidence to spend. At the same time, the economic growth, so increase the standard of living, so that leads to higher autonomous spending, right? So that's the story, that's the explanation behind these two graphs, but this also is application to what caused the shift, right? Right. So now I'm going to stop here for today, and the next class we will look at investment spending, or we are going to look at how I is going to change with your disposable income, right? So now let me stop here and give you the code.